agenda in April. Um, so I want to be able to make sure that everybody has an opportunity to talk to the consultant, express their concerns, issues with the consultant, and see what the consultant can do to meet the outboard's needs and requests so that this item can be discussed again at the April outboard meeting. I understand this process has been over a 2-year long process in getting to the point that we are now. It's gone through several rounds of public engagement. It's gone through several jurisdictions in approval and vetting and in processing. It's been through monthly court equity meetings every month with the consultant and the court in the various jurisdictions that are in the process and the stakeholders. It's been through a lot of extensive data review, data analysis to get from existing conditions report to public engagement to a final and draft document and report through another round of engagements that deliberated, discussed the recommendations from this. And as far as I know, this document has been thoroughly vetted. So I understand there's been issues, concerns regarding goals and objectives and some of the recommendations. I mean, I understand and appreciate there's a lot of consistency in some of the goals and recommendations, but issues that were some of the recommendations did not meet in line with the goals and objectives need to be discussed. And if I missed anything, please clarify, like Amy and Sherry or anybody, Art or anyone, if I missed any of the points that I making reviewing of the outboard's deliberation last meeting. VHB here can help and discuss the issues and concerns that y'all had with VHB. Lauren and James is here to help be able to meet some of the issues and concerns, especially regarding data, regarding follow-up, regarding issues and consistencies and inconsistencies with some of the recommendations. So I'm going to open this floor to between the outboard and the consultant to see what we can do and when we discuss this item again in April. Because please keep in mind it was made a county priority back in 2019 because of increasing fatalities, serious injuries, and all the issues along the corridor. It is designed to be a multimodal corridor for all uses and all functions. Let me see, what else did I miss? Any other point?
Well, while you're thinking, Nish, let me just, as an icebreaker, throw out there that I was unable to attend the meeting, so I don't understand the comments. So initially, I'm going to go on mute, but I'll be paying close attention.
Okay.
Maybe I can. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry, Lauren.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, I think Nish shared a couple of like specific comments that had come to him through email. So we were able to kind of maybe pull together a couple of things that might be able to address those specifics. But I think maybe the best way to get through today would just be to open it up to general discussion, see what we can get through if we've already got something prepared based on, kind of doing a little pre-work. And then if it's not something we can kind of answer on the fly, we can work towards finding that data or finding those answers that it's going to take to make you guys feel more comfortable with the report and recommendations. So we do have a couple of things kind of on some slides. I put together some numbers and whatnot, but I'll wait and share those kind of as they come up in discussion.
And since we have, and I'm very grateful to the outboard, really appreciate so many of y'all being able to attend this meeting. I really appreciate such a turnout for this, and I'm very grateful for that. It would help in managing if those that are virtual, I think Art is here in person and Eric is here in person. If y'all have it, just raise your hand so we can call one at a time so we can be clear and concise. I appreciate Darlene for recording this meeting so we can keep the notes and everything going on. So thank you so much, Amy. I leave it to you as you have your hand up, and then Art. Amy, then Art.
First of all, I just wanted to thank all of you. You put together an extremely thorough report. I mean, there's the detail that went into it. I can tell the amount of time and effort that went into it. And I think for me, that was very much appreciated for the concern for what we are addressing. I think the area that I was thinking about when I'm reading the report is I take a look at what the goals and objectives are, and those are really phenomenal goals and objectives. I think that that's spot on for what I would want as a member of this community to see, that if that's how we're planning for growth in our city, in our town, in our county, that's what I want to be able to see. when I read how we would meet those goals and objectives, I think there's a misalignment for me in some of those. And so overarching, what I think I'm not understanding is what the highest level goal for the 70 corridor is. Is it that we're trying to move more traffic through that space? Or are we trying to make it into a place where we're calming traffic measures and trying to create more of a feel of what that looks like in a community setting? And so I'm not getting the right thing. And for me, the biggest concern that I face with that is when we put in those really nice goals and objectives, and that's what people focus their time and that's their thought process is, oh, I look at those 7 goals, and I apologize, I can't remember if it was 7, but I'm saying 7. Looking at them, that sounds great, and I would definitely promote that. But then if I looked at, well, this is what it was actually implemented, that might conflict with that. And so I don't want to promote something where people get an image of what we're saying is the goal and objective, but the actual output doesn't align with that. And so that's where my concerns were. And I think maybe we can, talk about some of those specific areas, but I want to give others an opportunity to say something.
Yeah, so I can give a little bit of insight into that, and then if folks want to add on or take the question further, we can. But I mean, very well articulated, Amy, in that I think what you may be thinking about or referencing here is going maybe from the 2-lane to the 4-lane widening. Is that kind of a big concern here in that, like, we want to?
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's just about 2 to 4. It's about, we talk about preserving the nature, the natural landscape, and we talk about, just some of those ideas of what that looks like. To me, there's a conflict. It's conflicting between. I personally, I'm not concerned about 2 to 4. I mean, I think there's things that, maybe alternatives, but it's how are we actually addressing the fact that that current corridor is lined with trees and it's lined with a lot of other natural landscape. And then by expanding that, we'll be taking that down. Yeah. So how do we say we're kind of, that's our goal and objective, but we're actually tearing down the landscape in order to do that?
So I think just first and foremost, the idea, just to address the 2 to 4, because I want to make it clear that's not really that is not a recommendation of the study, is to widen from 2 to 4. We did a lot of vehicular traffic investigation at the beginning of this project that indicated that is basically it is an impending situation. That widening at some point will be called for based on the projected growth, and we used the regional model, statewide model to verify that. And so what we were kind of faced with was, okay, if we know ultimately this 2-lane roadway that is, at points feels very rural, or when it goes through, a more populated area, seems like the potential for a great, like maybe downtown placemaking type feel, like in Mebane. We were trying to figure out how to balance the need to move traffic with providing for multimodal users, whether that's transit amenities or peds and bikes. So the idea that we, are, quote, tearing down landscape, I think that's going to come from what happens as frontages along US 70 are redeveloped, whether that's private development and those developers are held to certain standards, or whether that's what goes into the complete street typical section that would ultimately be implemented most likely by an NCDOT widening project.
Laura, can I ask you a quick question, follow-up question to that issue of widening and landscaping, just to build, and I know Art, anything you're next. Hillsborough has their landscaping plan for that widening. That landscaping of widening for 70 is also planned in how the landscaping is preserved, correct? This is in their connectivity plan. This is also in their sustainability plan that fed into this US 70 corridor study, that in the event this is widened, this is how the land is preserved through landscaping, other improvements that would be covered by complete streets.
Right,
Or
this would just
potentially be covered by complete
be-
streets. That the landscaping would be done by developer making their development improvements to accommodate and ensure landscaping as the areas being as the road corridor evolves
as
over
it's
time.
growing. Mhm. Yes, that
Yeah.
was my understanding. Okay, Art, is that you?
Okay, Art, Sherry, and then Greg.
Yeah, the expansion from 2 to 4 lane to me seemed inconsistent with most of the rest of the goals of the project. It seemed a real outlier compared to slowing traffic, making it more friendly for pedestrians and bicyclists. The many goals I agree with that appear in this plan, which are the vast majority of the goals, but the 4 laning seemed like an outlier. Getting traffic onto I-85, I-40 is mentioned in the important sections about improving the connectivity between the 70 corridor and the interstates, which is absolutely correct. And and the suggestions there are very good, but to me, it seems like a lot of these goals, an important step in that is moving all the traffic that can get moved over to the interstates, and 70 not be a first choice and someone except for short commutes within
Right.
the area to make our goal to move every vehicle over to the interstate. We can move over to the interstate and off of 70.
Yeah, well, and I'll just say again, from where the traffic's going to go, the models that we use to project future roadway traffic, trucks and vehicles, not peds and bikes, that's based off of the current adopted statewide model. What that includes is a widened 4085. It includes all fiscally constrained projects in the comprehensive transportation plans. And so those are on various horizon years, but looking out at 2050, which is what we looked at, the way the model works is so basically it's kind of the model puts the traffic on the path of least resistance from its origin to its destination. And we could go into more detail on the modeling effort if you want to. That might take a little bit more just visual prep so that I'd have those types of graphics to speak to, but essentially the model that we run for 2050 that gave us the amount of traffic that is expected to be on US 70 in the future year, that accounts for quote unquote all the traffic moving to 40 and 85 that's going to move to 40 and 85 based on the available capacity within the network that was modeled. And so what we see when that happens, and I will just share my screen here for a second. So this is a level service table that we have for the corridor. Now we also have intersection levels of service that drill down more into like individual turning movements, but we did take a look just at the different segments, A through F, I believe, and assuming a 2-lane highway, even with the 40 and 85 widening, even with the improvement of Churton Street, whatever was coded into that in assuming that what is called for in the long range plans are in place, we're still seeing levels level service of E and F, which is basically just like a report card. Those are failing levels of service. We really strive for anything D or above. And so all that to say, the idea, the 4-lane being quote an outlier, or the widening being an outlier, that's why I wanted to make it clear that's not a recommendation of the study. We're assuming that is eventually going to be a base condition because we can tell from the traffic projections that it's going to be warranted in the future. And we, like Nish said, we did a lot of data analysis and collection and verification early in the process to make sure that we had good estimates for those. And so
So
with
can I make a
with
suggestion?
that,
Can I make a suggestion? because I didn't do a good job at the outboard explaining this, and I didn't go into the level of service that I had to address them with this issue. And correct me if I'm wrong, you're verifying that when you did this analysis that you took two models into consideration, the adopted triangle regional model and the statewide model. Both models say in 2050, even with the 85 and 40 widening, and because that would be that's supposed to be going on right now, it should be done within the next 5-6 years, should be complete. That project should be complete even at 2050. That even when the traffic moves onto I-85 and I-40, the widening of it, traffic on 70 is still going to require the need for widening 70.
Correct.
Because of modeling that's going to be done. This model, and just to confirm, this model is updated every 4 years. The state is updated every 3 years because of the tip. Okay,
but yeah,
so I think what we need to, I think it would help if we can present and show this, that even with the improvements in the future horizon of this stuff, even with the widening of 80, widening of 40, traffic on local roads, regional roads like this is still going to need. So the level of service, this report card of E and F is critical in explaining this, that the need, why even after all this future, it's going to need to happen, and how we can continue preserving. So I guess the data needs to be shown, even though it's in the report, even if it's in the existing conditions and the alternative stuff. And part of their scope of work is short-term, mid-term, and long-term improvements and different alternatives, like the no build is an alternative to don't do anything with 70, well, you're still gonna have problems on 70 in the future.
Yeah, my last thing was, do you all have data to support the assumed need or demand in a couple of areas, one being for low-income people to find non-automotive transportation to potential work along the corridor, and the other be a need or demand for non-automotive transportation to parks?
So just to make sure I got the question right, do we have data to support that those communities exist, or that they that they have the demand for the types of recommendations we're making?
The demand that they would actually use those non-automotive assets if they were available to them to go either to work or to recreation at the parks.
That is not a real straightforward answer. I mean, I think it's one of these, if currently they don't have like access to a personal automobile, and they're getting by with whatever transit usage they can they can find, the idea that if there was another alternative available, such as a better sidewalk system or a better transit operational system for getting to and from those places, I don't have like a model that says that they would use that demand would come, but it would be, I think it would follow that if the infrastructure was there, it would get used, in assuming the absence of personal vehicles is still the base issue.
It's totally logical. It's a completely sensible assumption. I just don't know that it's how the real world is actually going to play out.
I can present to you at the April meeting. I can present to you. We have another consultant, Nelson Nygaard, who's doing our short-range transit plan. The short-range transit plan also includes some of this analysis called the Transit Density Index that talks about how Northern Orange County and areas around Hillsborough are using environmental justice and transit density stuff that talks about alternative modes along this corridor. I can present that to you at the April meeting that shows how, yes, because you're also recommending in the study that US 70 be a transit emphasis corridor because of transit improvements, TOD. Well, if those are implemented, that these are low-income areas within Hillsborough, Mebane, and stuff like that would use these alternative modes of transportation. I could present that to you at the April meeting.
And that's where some of the more nitty-gritty specific transit recommendations, like pairing the bidirectional bus stops, is we got down into the detail of things like that to make it so that it is a full and complete system that is usable from point A to point B and back to point A. As opposed to some situations now where maybe you can get on a bus in the direction you want to go, but then when you try to come home, you don't get dropped off in the same place. And, and we also looked at extensions or expansions of service routes that would hit communities that if they had more proximity to the access, if it was closer to their front door, that could encourage more use as well. So I do see where you're coming from, and maybe Nish, we can to hear that Nelson Nygaard's doing that density plan. That's great to know, and I think that may help support and answer what Art's asking for.
Okay, we'll get together to do that. Yeah.
Thanks.
All right, I think it was Sherry's hand was up.
Yeah, Sherry's next.
Hi, yeah, thank you for doing this and for all the other members who are on this call. I have several questions, so I can just tell you what they all are and you want to answer them or not, however the best way to do this.
Okay.
You showed us the level of service,
Mhm.
the Ds and Es and all of that. What is the time of day for those? Because I'm a little concerned whenever I go over to Lake Cary or even going down Martin Luther King, you know, during the day, you know, huge wide open lanes, very few cars. You know, what are we building for the peak? Is that what we're doing here? That's just a comment. It's not necessarily.
Yeah. And they are peak hour analyses.
Right.
So we do take a look. If it's intersection specific, it's going to be generally between your 6 a.m. and 8 a.m. peak, and then your 4 and 6 p.m. Peak. And so to answer your question, yes, they're peak hour analyses is what we're looking at. We do have some daily numbers that are more from the model that we could maybe dig further into if the peak hour, you know, designing for a peak hour versus the rest of the hours of the day. Or, you know, there could be an opportunity to look at just other hours of the day. I'd have to go back and see if we did peak hour counts or if we did, 13-hour counts, 24-hour ADT counts. That I could see what kind of available data we have for that that may be able to allay some of those concerns.
Well, the other part of it is when were the counts done? I mean, we've just come through 2 years where there was very little traffic. Well, there was traffic, but it wasn't necessarily volume. And then you have now. So that was one question. So section 4.6.2 is the crash data. And it does not, it's narrative in there, and it does not reflect over what period of time were those incidents. And there's not, you know, it didn't seem like there was a whole lot of crashes there. And I know one of your recommendations is to lower the speed limit to 35, which I'm a little concerned about because sometimes lowering a speed limit on a road like that could potentially cause more accidents as people get more anxious, as people who are used to driving that road at ridiculous speeds then become frustrated. They pass against the line. Yes, you know, on and on and on. So I wanted to just understand, and it should be included in your report that you have the time frame for that.
Yeah, so the existing conditions report went a lot deeper into the crash analysis, and you know, it was taken over a 5-year period. Well, let me get back. Traffic counts. Those were originated with 2019 data. We also, though, used streetlight data, more current, which uses basically cell phone technology to help tell where cars are, to help calibrate to a quote base year, current year, which I believe was 2023. And then we projected out to 2050. So that's kind of the background of the traffic analysis years and when the data came from. And again, there's.
And the projection is using state's approved projection rate.
Yeah, it's using the model.
Yeah, it's using the adopted model that both the state has adopted and the Triangle Regional model is also adopted in the MTP. So it's approved methodology that's being used.
And when was the model adopted?
And when the 2045 MTP was done, the 2050 MTP was done.
2050 MTP.
Yeah, I'll have to get you the exact date. I think it was
Actually,
also adopted in 2019 or 20.
Okay, so it was before COVID. It was before everything changed, the model.
So there
The
was
model
actually,
takes into consideration post-COVID period.
Yeah, there was a model that was approved, I think in early 2023, James.
It was
that-
most recently updated in October.
October of 2023, right?
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay. All right. I just wanted, I'm going to keep moving because I know other people have questions. All right.
Hold on, I just want to make sure I've got these questions down right. So then the other one was about the crash, showing the length of time. So the specific section that I think you referenced, 462, that is specific to large vehicle crashes. There's also a section on ped bike crashes, and then at the intro there's just an overview of crashes in general, and which I've got, and we can, I don't know, do you want to, as we're coming up on time, do we want to go through and get lists of questions, or do you want me to keep talking out responses, Nish?
Well, you could, you understand the need for the crash data and to review the crash data. I guess one presentation that can be, one point that can be shown at the April meeting is the existing conditions analysis of the crash data and the recommendations and the issues of the crash data. Because the existing conditions report, the analysis of all this crash and traffic and all that stuff was done, a little over a year ago.
Okay. Okay. And
let me just throw this out really quick because of your time issue. I'm just trying to understand this. You say that this report does not include a recommendation to widen the 70 from 2 to 4 lanes. It does not recommend that. Instead, it assumes that there will be a widening of 70 from 2 to 4 lanes. And based on that assumption, this plan, when that happens, NCDOT can use this plan to guide its widening process. Is that correct?
Yes, and the multimodal accommodations that would be included with that typical section.
The multimodal, the multimodal
mixed-use
accommodations
path.
cannot be included if it's not included in the study. If you had done the study with just the widening itself, the DOT would use that as a leverage to not do any bike ped accommodations. Because the focus is non-highway, the outcome is the widening. Because it gives us leverage with DOT, said, okay, in the event that you do widen this road, we want you to
Here's
add
what you
bike
need to
ped
include.
and transit as you do the wide because of complete streets.
But is it also include, I'm sorry, I just want to get this clear. So Nish, if that is the case, does that also mean that the recommendations, or if there are recommendations on providing some protection of the environmental issues, would also be that NCDOT would actually have to go by that? Because
Yes,
that was,
because they would do it through the NEPA. The NEPA process would be the first step that would be recorded, and this would be the first primary document to their NEPA.
Which that's
Okay.
so that's and hopefully when the time comes, if I'm not retired, I'll be the one doing that.
No,
That's another hat I wear.
The other thing I just want to comment on lastly is the electric vehicles. According to the federal government, we are going to try to have a majority of electric vehicles in 2050. Since this is in that time horizon, is there any accommodation or reference, or will that affect any of the recommendations in this plan? And then I will just turn my mic off. Thank you very much.
I think the quick answer to that is from just kind of an off the cuff here. In terms of charging infrastructure or things like that, that could be included with the town's resiliency or sustainability plans, things like that. As far as the recommendations of this project, an EV is going to function just like a gas vehicle as far as like its presence on the road. And so I think the sidewalks, the mixed use paths and things like that would stay the same from a recommendation standpoint.
And Sherry, just to confirm, we will be working as this plan is approved. If this plan is approved and adopted, we will be using this in coordination with the county's climate action plan, the county strategic plan, and the new land use 2050 plan that is also going in the process. So this would give us more leverage in ensuring that there's consistency with other plans and documents that are adopted by the county. that the climate action plan will be adopted, it was adopted recently, and it will be updated every 2 to 4 years. So be ensuring that is implemented through this process, through this plan, the land use plan, the short range transit plan that's being done, that's recommending improvements. So we will be ensuring that there's consistency with other plans as the county evolves through this from now in 2050.
All right,
Okay.
Greg?
I'm sorry, is there a way that we can put in the opening statement something about the fact that we hope or we urge the DOT to use this as a guidance document? Can we say that explicitly?
Absolutely.
Yeah, we can do that.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank
And,
And you can also
and-
extend this to ensuring consistency with the county's climate action plan and other adopted policies.
yeah, and actually, you know, from the point of view of NCDOT, but when they go into starting a project such as a widening of US 70 in the future, a review of previous plans like this is done and is included in part of the NEPA documentation. And that's where if plans like these are on the quote unquote on the books, that's when complete streets policy from DOT starts to kick in, as far as them being required to build it and pay for it now, as opposed to previously where they might have had to build it, but the cost share might have been different between DOT and the communities.
And I have learned something from Chapel Hill, and this comes from the experience we had with Chapel Hill. The 15501 corridor that was recently it was completed last year, that included the New Hope area, the area that's all developing that on 15501 between Durham and Chapel Hill. Well, the study was completed. It was not adopted. It was not approved. Because it was not approved, DOT went ahead and redesigned the interchange and the improvements. And now Chapel Hill later came back and said, oh, we had the study done. Well, DOT is saying you didn't approve it. It's not an official study because there was no approval of it. So you cannot use a study that was not approved as, oh, we changed our mind.
But I
So
like,
it has to be
I like,
approved. It has to be adopted to be able to use as a leverage.
yeah. So, but Sherry, I
Otherwise,
like
DOT can
putting,
do whatever the heck it
DOT
wants.
will say, hey, you didn't
Not
approve
on the
it.
books.
We don't recognize it.
But I think adding specific wording, Sherry, to just state that this is a guidance document for the future widening of US 70 is a good add for sure.
That'd be great. Thank you. And the next one is Greg.
Greg?
Excellent, appreciate it. And thanks for coming in. So it sounds like we'll have a follow-up in the April meeting. This is really to help kind of prep for those questions. Is that
Correct.
great?
Mhm.
So I'll just give my questions. I don't need any answers today, but I think back to the earlier part when we kicked off the meeting, for me, what would help is almost like an elevator pitch. We had the 4 core goals that we wanted to achieve. You know, how can we speak to that with a little bit of data? Because, you know, if we say we're going to improve traffic, but then we're going to lower speed limits, how do we quantify that? You know, because this is going to be very expensive. So how do we say, well, by doing this is what we see and by how much? I'm
Okay.
kind of a data person, so when we invest in stuff, I kind of want to know, how do we see the return on that investment? And we're not back in 4 or 5 years saying, oops, yeah, we said we we're gonna make it faster and we slow down the roads and that wasn't the effect. You know, to me, I'm not concerned about whether we widen the 4 lanes or not. It's probably needed. But I would like to see, when we talk about the slowing down, same thing with the access into some of the parkways, the greenways. So, you know, almost like start at the top with an elevator pitch. Like if we had to go back out and talk to our fellow neighbors, how would we pitch this and say, well, we said we're going to improve the traffic flow, and they say, oh, that's nice. Everybody always says that. How do we explain that? And I don't want to go into the deep details, because I trust you all as professionals have done the studies, but just a way that we can talk to it and understand it, right?
Yeah, I think
that's really my comment.
Just not going deep into it, but just off the top of my head, it's some sort of travel time comparison from point A to point B is maybe something that we could do. You know, if you're not queuing at a single lane stoplight for as long, then even if you're limited to 35 miles an hour, you're not stopped in a single location. We can see about doing that kind of thing.
And then how we incorporate, I think somebody else mentioned it, like how we're incorporating some of the multimodal transport. Make sure there's adoption, because what I'm always concerned about, there's a lot of build it and they will come, and there's a lot of stuff we built and no one's using it. So just a little bit, how would we see that? You know, do we have other communities nearby that we've seen them have similar success in the improvements? Because there's, like I said, this is a big budget. I think that's going to be asked. I just want to make sure I feel comfortable saying, yeah, this makes sense, and we are going to hit the goals that we said we would hit. But that's it for me. I appreciate that.
Sure. Looks like Michael
Yeah.
has a stand up.
Oh, I had to unmute. Thank you very much. Hey, Lauren, I really appreciate all of the way you're handling all of this, and particularly that last comment you made with respect to Greg's suggestion with your time of travel idea. You showed, and excuse me if you talked about this and I missed it. Well, you showed the 2050 level services ENFs.
Mm-hmm.
What does the current level service look like?
Yes. I can show you that too. Give me just a second. Corridor level. Okay. So, in our, again, I'm referencing back to our existing conditions report. So what we've got here, so this is figure 21 in that report showing that currently in the Mebane area, we're operating at a level service D. We're essentially A through C until we get down closer to the Durham line. And so, yeah, so this is, no, this is existing conditions.
Service tables.
Yep.
He's looking at the charts, the beginning.
Yeah, this is the corridor level of service today.
No, separate. That's a separate document. Sorry, it's a. Yeah, I gave them
Oh,
the
yeah.
recommendation document. I need to print out you
Oh.
the existing conditions document.
Sorry, yeah, this is
two
the
separate
existing
documents. This is
conditions.
another document. I'm going to have to give you all hard copies of the existing conditions documents. It's separate. How many pages was that document?
120.
Yeah, it's a separate. document.
And so what we're seeing here is like if nothing was growing, if this area wasn't growing and people didn't want to be here, and then it's actually operating generally okay from a corridor level of service with a couple of intersections that operate at your failing levels of service. So like
It's this. Yeah, it's this. Sorry, it is this. Do you have it in there?
Yeah, it's goal setting, and then I was putting.
And so,
1.1, that was it. Yeah,
so Michael, what we show here,
That's this chapter. Critical issues. This is no, it's a separate document. This is summary.
There's one too many conversations going on there, but
Sorry,
ahead,
the report
Lauren.
that I gave Art,
Sorry.
the report that we have, and the one that was in the packet only had the final document. It didn't have the existing conditions report. The existing condition report was reviewed last year, and it was in the previous packet last year.
Yeah. And so, so getting back to the 2020 intersection, we looked at specific key intersections along the corridor, and so you can see those here. Hopefully that's big enough.
Yeah.
And so you can see we're, A's, B's, and C's with some E's, some D's in various places. But what we're saying is if we keep the 2 lanes and the configurations as they are now, single lane approaches, maybe a left turn lane here or there, and we layer on top of that the future year traffic, that's when you get these E's and F's. From both a corridor and an intersection levels of service. So I kind of hear this will help as well. So what I just showed you with the dots, and again, for the April meeting, we can make these graphics more consistent. So it's more of an apples to apples conversation. I just kind of pulled together some things that we have on hand for today. But so this is the 2050 do nothing versus widen to 4 lanes and put in the intersection laneage improvements that were also part of the recommendations. So you can see in 2050, everything that's red here, 175 seconds of delay per vehicle is kind of what that means. And when we do the improvement, we go to 30 seconds of delay. Again, these are peak hour analyses. Just as that design hour, but you can see the kind of the red really improves once we do the vehicular improvements, and that is, like I said, just kind of the base case of what 70 is going to do in the future to accommodate the traffic that is expected.
Nicely done. That was I put a question earlier in the chat just to that point, but going back to your existing condition. Mm-hmm. Diagrams that you had.
Yeah.
is there, maybe more a question for Nish, but is there any thing on the docket in the short term to improve what are the current delays?
So I think that, oh, Nish, you're on mute if you're trying to talk.
Just to give you an example, Eflin Cedar Grove Road, that where it says C.
Yeah.
Okay, this is an example. That's Eflin Industrial Development that's going on right now. If you drive in that area, if you drive in that Eflin, you'll see this big gray building going up and construction going on and development going on for the industrial park that's being developed there.
Yeah, I cross that intersection a couple of times a week.
Yeah, well, that traffic caused by that is in their traffic impact analysis, the TIA that they did in that recommended improvement. Well, that development predates this study.
Go ahead.
Because that's going to cause more traffic in that area and that development occurring in that area, also on I-85, I-40 in that area. This is also showing that, okay, you do nothing with 70, more traffic from developments like this is going to cause on that 70.
Yeah, and so Michael, one thing I'd say to address the quote, anything on the docket, we are looking at this from a 21 plus mile corridor perspective.
Right.
If NCDOT or the county or the MPOs, if they want to elevate specific smaller projects, then showing those problems in this and potential recommendations works the same way as it kind of being an on the books recommendation for when DOT does a wider project. So like if you look at the NC 86 at US 70, we're currently at a level of service C. And when we've got their highlighted purple, which shows potential queuing issues, that's in the existing conditions. And so if that's seen as an issue that someone, one of the, like the MPO, the county or locals want to elevate in the NCDOT prioritization process, well, then now they've got something here to start from as a recommendation for what could be done to improve that. Now, it would not include the 4-lane widening yet, but you could set it up such that it doesn't preclude the 4-lane widening, but maybe does some local widening to allow for dual left turn lanes or an exclusive right or something like that. And so just like the on the docket intersection question, I just like this, they can kind of individually be pulled out as location specific recommendations in the event that those projects want and are prioritized by the various agencies and are looking for funding from DOT in that way.
Yeah, well,
Thanks, Lauren.
Lauren did a great job at the DOT perspective, and how we have, this plan gives us leverage with the DOT and the state recommended improvements on the road. But by a locally adopted plan, it gives us as planners, as Darlene and stuff, through development review process to impose these recommendations on the developer. So if the developer, say 5 years down the line, decides to put a hospital or some other industrial development or some other development or a subdivision along the corridor or anything, or a shopping mall or something along the corridor, it gives us leverage through the development review process to say, hey, developer, we have this adopted plan. You need to do X, Y, Z because of a locally adopted plan.
Either need to dedicate the land such that it can be built in the future, or if it's a product of a traffic impact analysis that they actually need to build one of those lanes or something like that. Again, this, like Nish said, this kind of gives you just the base leg to stand on to start requiring those things of developers.
Cool. And I will say this, Nish probably knows that, but I've been on the other side of that conversation where I brought something in and had that kind of feedback that we have to do some infrastructure improvement to get it through. But Lauren, can you go back to the previous slide before this one that showed red dots at the intersection with 5th Street, 4th Street, and 3rd Street?
Yes, I can. Let me remember where that was. I think it, believe you were looking at this guy?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
this is the corridor level of service. Those are just indicating that those are signalized intersections.
And that's current conditions.
Current conditions.
D, And what kind of delay might you expect with D?
So let's see, from an intersection standpoint, here we go. This is what I was looking for. So your average travel speed, free flow for a D, well, you're gonna, let's see, is that how we want to describe it? That's not what I want to do. I'm trying to think of the quick and dirty answer for, okay,
And you could follow up in our
average
meeting.
travel speed.
You can follow up in our meeting, but the question would be also, just to follow up on that, not necessarily looking for the answer, but is there anything, Nish or team, that we could do as a group that would encourage some analysis of signal timing or other ways?
No, signal timing requires DOT warrant analysis. DOT requires a warrant analysis for signalizations and traffic signals. I mean, DOT will require detailed warrant analysis. I mean, give you an example.
If you were going to put in a new signal, that
or even the synchronized signals. Even, I mean,
signals.
Chapel Hill's trying to synchronize all their signals, and though that synchronization of Chapel Hill signals is requiring a detailed warrant analysis before DOT synchronizes all the signals on MLK and other corridors on Chapel Hill. That's something that Chapel Hill is trying to work on and stuff. So there is a level of work that can be done. It's more done administratively with DOT. Give you an example, and this is to attack two of your points, Michael, to address two of your points. The Lawrence Road development, when the charter school was going up.
Sure.
The charter school did a traffic impact analysis. The TIA, Kimberly Horn, did the traffic impact analysis for the charter school and the rec center going there on Lawrence and 70 business.
Mm-hmm.
The developer had met the traffic warrant for signalizing the intersection at 70 business and Lawrence Road.
Okay.
Okay. The developer had met the DOT's traffic warrant for a signal.
Right.
Developer was offering $400,000 for the signal, cutting a check. Here's the check for the signal and the improvements on that intersection with turn lanes and everything. DOT said no.
They wanted it built instead.
The follow-up
because it
question
involved
would
a
be,
school, and DOT would have to give the money back.
Oh,
oh, that was my next question. Why? But you got it.
Charter, because it involved a school and state law changed about schools or any improvements, traffic improvements related to schools, DOT has to reimburse the developer.
I did find this table. It's about delay associated with the levels of service, Michael, and this is specific to intersections as opposed to corridor levels of service. But you know, a level service D, on average per vehicle, you're between basically 30 and 60 seconds at a signalized intersection, and that's considered, like I said, we strive for C or better, but D is doable. But E's and F's, we really try to mitigate through, whether that's optimized timings, if you can get those pushed through, or additional capacity.
Thank you.
I do want to address Sherry's question, and I'm sorry, Michael, do you have, I'm sorry, go ahead, Michael.
One last curveball question.
Sure. Hit me.
How does the level, what is the existing level of service on NC 54, which we also just currently recommended to the BOCC to move forward?
Their level of service, you could, the existing conditions for that report is also there. I'll get that to you and present that also at the meeting if you need to see that.
I think
it
would be interesting just as a point of comparison for me,
right?
Because I don't travel 70 corridor much. I tend to cross it, but I tend to travel 54 a lot. And just, this is more unique to me. It's just my curiosity. Thanks very much, Nish. And Lauren.
I'll help you to present that.
All right.
And Sherry, to help answer your question regarding what you can do with the study, we can only affect the Orange County portion. So you can make your action at the April meeting, any approval of the study contingent on X, Y, Z. Like this is, we're recommending approval, recommending this. Like, okay, we also recommend whatever you want to do with the speed for the rural portion of Orange County. Like if you want to say the recommended speed be should address it a little differently, like change or reduce the speed, as your action also includes additional recommendations to be considered through your action at the April meeting. So as an outboard, we do have a strong influence in the shaping the rural portion, because the towns are taking independent action on their town portion of it. So we cannot tell Hillsborough what to do. We can't tell Mebane what to do.
Okay, so I just want to make sure I understand. Are you saying that if at our April meeting, we can review this and we can ask that some of the recommendations be taken out?
Not
Before
taken
they,
out, but change, like you can make changes, because right now the actions that the towns are taking is endorsing the plan as is. I mean, Mebane's action has been endorsing the whole plan as is, so we can't take anything out of something that's been approved, and that's something that Hillsborough is going to be doing tomorrow when I present it to Hillsborough. So you can make, for the Orange County's portion, we can make changes to the Orange County's portion that you feel that you cannot remove something that's been approved. Like, what is it you want to do with the speed? I mean, I understand you want to do something with the speed. So is there a certain idea that we can explore, that the consultant can explore for the April meeting for the speed?
I find that change in the speed limit is not necessarily going to achieve what the recommendation wants it to. And I think
that's where I wonder if we may need some sort of interim meeting or email to, a memo of some sort, kind of laying out some of our answers to these, because we haven't gone into depth in some of the things that about what the crash trends show about congestion and how the speed does actually line up with severity and runoff road crashes. Like, I would like to be able to show you guys those things that may change whether or not you want to endorse the speed limit change or not. And so, I don't know if we do that presentation of data and kind of information at the April meeting, and then there's potential for changes to recommendations, and then it's a following meeting where it's finally endorsed, or if we want to try to address as much as we can so that there is or isn't, there's a clear approval or not a, hey, if you change this and adjust that, then we'll approve it. We can see what the most efficient way of getting to that April meeting decision is.
The outboard meeting is April 15th. Is the third Monday of the month? Correct? Third Monday of the month is April 15th. I don't think you can do April 1st.
No.
So I don't know if the outboard wants to get together again between the 2nd and the 15th, or would you like to let the consultant get more information together and present at the 15th meeting?
My perspective would be to wait until the 15th.
Yeah, as was mine.
Okay.
So one thing, just to give you an example of a contingent approval, is the NC 54 corridor study that has been approved. To give you an example of how effective a conditional approval is, here's an example of how effective it is, and this has been proven because I got it done with it, and I got a letter from DOT confirming this. The approval of a corridor study, a multimodal corridor study like 54, was approved on the condition that complete streets and multimodal accommodations be included in any roadway improvement. DOT came back with a preliminary courtesy complete streets review of that approval. Even though it's not a program project, even though it's not in the STIP, it's going through a scoring process right now, even though it's not a program project, DOT has written back with a preliminary courtesy complete streets review that any highway improvements on 54 will include non-highway improvements paid by the state.
Yeah, and I can actually speak a little further to that, because one of the other contracts that I work on and run for our firm is the DOT Express Design contract, which is basically, sorry if I getting off track here, but basically that's the process that DOT uses to get planning level project specific cost estimates that help with prioritization. And I happen to, VHB is doing the 54 Express Design, and it does have those accommodations included in the design and the cost. And that is because those facilities and accommodations are included in planning documents. And so now the Integrated Mobility Division does a review and makes sure that projects moving forward are inclusive of those types of complete streets elements.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't said much, only because I don't love the widening. I hate the inevitability of that, but I really do appreciate that this is an effort to maximize the benefit of a bad situation, and build the infrastructure to support multimodal that is not cars and trucks, but in fact buses, ped, and bike. It's a devil's bargain, but I like that we're actually putting a stake in the ground and connecting to complete streets and other activities for the future.
Okay, well, it sounds like we've got quite a few, or a number of action items, Nish, to follow up with on you, just digging a little deeper into some data and graphics to answer some of these questions that we'll be able to present at the 15th meeting.
And my hands are off of the presentation. My hands are off of the April presentation. Okay, this is y'all's presentation to the outboard.
Did y'all see that? He just threw me in there.
I didn't mean to throw you under the bus. I will help you. I'm supporting you. I'm supporting y'all. I mean, I'll be happy to support. I got a presentation tomorrow to Hillsborough right now.
I'm just kidding, Nish. What was that, Sherry?
I'll be there to support y'all to go through this whole process. And I really appreciate the outboard. Thank you, Sherry. Thank you, Amy. Thank you, everybody at the outboard for participating in this.
Yeah, I think Sherry still had something to say.
I just wanted to say that because we're now going to just do all of this at the meeting on in the April meeting, is it possible for you to put together whatever kind of question, answer, reference document, PowerPoint or something like that we can look at beforehand, and then give you any follow-up questions prior to that meeting so that we can have an expedited meeting for them?
Yeah, I'll see, within the next 2 weeks, gracious 3 weeks, how far we can get. But I think we've got a lot of the information available. It's just a matter of putting it together. At a minimum, I want to follow this meeting up with an email that outlines the questions that really need to get answered, and then presenting the answers to those. And getting follow-up will kind of be time dependent on what we can get done before the 15th, but definitely want to have some conversation before the 15th to make sure we don't leave anything unanswered when we do meet up again.
Thank you.
Very grateful. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Lauren.
Really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you, Lauren. Thank you, outboard. Very grateful.
All right.
Look forward to more progress in another discussion.
Yep. See you in a couple weeks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks.